Maloni, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Koroi Hawkins. Coming up, Pacific leaders appreciative of meeting with diverse groups in New Caledonia.
Speaking to Forum delegate members before they left, they found it very positive.
There are hopes developed nations affected by severe natural disasters take climate change more seriously. And later on,
I saw some things this year that I've never seen before.
late arrivals and rare sightings in the Cook Islands whale migration season. A high-level team of Pacific Islands forum leaders this week completed a fact-finding mission to assess the situation in New Caledonia. The French territory is dealing with the aftermath of rioting and violence, which left 13 dead and dozens of businesses destroyed. Islands business journalist Nick McClellan has spent the past 2 weeks in New Caledonia, and he told Don Wiseman the forum leaders spoke with a diverse range of people.
With the French High Commission and French authorities, with the President and Government of New Caledonia, leading provincial presidents, Sonia Baques of the Southern Province, Jacques Lallier of the Loyalty Islands, but most importantly, a diverse range of business leaders, of church and community leaders, representatives of women's groups. They held a lunch with young people, and the forum chair, Prime Minister Soboleni of Tonga, noted that they'd received diverse perceptions of the current situation, hardly surprising given the differences between supporters and opponents of independence. But speaking to forum delegate members before they left, they found it very positive to be able to hear directly from this diverse range of people.
What is it they've learnt?
I think there's a few central things. One of the big features of the discussion was about the economic crisis in New Caledonia, with significant unemployment, with many businesses damaged and shuttered. France has made extra payments beyond those they normally do over recent months, but some of those are loans that need to be repaid rather than grants. The French Overseas Minister, François-Noël Buffet, was recently here and pledged to extend some subsidy schemes for people who've lost hours, lost days in their jobs. That'll be continued until Christmas. But there's a great anxiety about what economic support France will continue to provide throughout 2025 at a time their own budget is incredibly tight.
Well, they have asked for billions of euros, haven't they? So it's unlikely they're going to get anything like that.
Absolutely. The Congress of New Caledonia put forward a proposal for more than 4 billion euros over the next 5 years. The government of New Caledonia, led by President Louis Mapu, has put forward a plan that's dubbed PS2R, which is for stabilising, for rebuilding and reconstructing the economy, looking over the next few years. But there's anxiety across the political spectrum here that France won't deliver on the economic support that is required.
Well, one of the interesting things is that the forum has come forward and said we might be able to help out. What did they say?
One of the central themes of this visit by Prime Minister Sitiveni Rabuka of Fiji, Soboleni of Tonga, Mark Brown of the Cook Islands, together with the Solomon Islands Foreign Minister, Peter Chanel Agobaka, was to talk about regional integration. You know, there's a lot of talk as Prime Minister Soboleni met with customary leaders at the Kanak Customary Senate on Sunday afternoon. He talked a lot about family, that we're here as family, we're here to listen as family and to work with New Caledonia, which people will know is a full member of the Pacific Islands Forum, has been since 2016. And that wasn't just from politicians. It was very interesting. I've interviewed a number of business leaders over the last couple of weeks I've been here, and they're very much looking for economic opportunities in the region with neighbouring countries like Australia, New Zealand, Vanuatu and others. And I was struck by how the business community is very much focused on the region rather than simply reliance on France. At the same time, when he spoke after meeting with the forum delegation on Monday, President Mapu highlighted, however, that there were constraints about the capacity for New Caledonia to sign economic agreements to improve its trade and commerce because of a whole range of economic and political barriers. He stressed that the very fact that New Caledonia is what's dubbed a non-self-governing territory constrained its opportunities to work with partners in the region. But that whole question of regional integration was highlighted not just by the forum delegation, but by many of the people that spoke with the Pacific leaders.
When the forum talks about this need for regional integration, what's the essential message they're trying to convey with that? That New Caledonia has to basically be a part of the Pacific, not a part of Europe.
I think very clearly it is part of the Pacific and always has been. And I think one of the threads of the Blue Pacific agenda is to try and transcend colonial boundaries, both historic and contemporary, that divide the Pacific. You know, there's enormous opportunities for New Caledonia to contribute to debates, as they have, around, for example, seabed mining. They've joined many other countries in the region to pledge a moratorium on seabed mining in the 1.3 million square kilometre exclusive economic zone here. New Caledonia's women have been at the forefront of a lot of the discussions. Nearly half the Congress of New Caledonia is made up of female politicians. The new Speaker of the Congress is a Wallisian woman. And one of the themes that came out from a number of the interventions from civil society and church leaders was that women have been left to clean up a lot of the mess from the last 6 months. The role of women as peacemakers was a central theme raised by Sonia Tonya, a leading feminist activist here, during her discussions with the Forum delegation. So I think there's a real sense of opportunity, but still constraints, because France is still the administering power here. And that was a very sensitive issue as the Forum delegation danced around the deeper political questions about decolonisation, but certainly in the corridors around the Carver Bowl, those were discussed, and there were meetings with political parties on Tuesday afternoon to talk about these issues.
Well, the Forum team has now left. When can we expect a substantial report from them?
I think you'd have to ask the Forum that. I know that the staff who accompanied the delegation, accompanying the 4 leaders, the Forum staff will prepare a report which will be sent to member governments. I think it'll officially be discussed at the next Forum, but that's not until Honiara come September, October next year.
It's a little way away, isn't it? You would think if they're reacting to a crisis, you want something a whole lot more immediate, don't you?
Well, that was one of the political problems about this whole enterprise. Forum leaders from the very beginning of the conflict after 13th of May were eager to play a role in assisting dialogue, in calling for an end to violence, but also highlighting that New Caledonia is a member of the Forum. And it was the government of New Caledonia that invited the Forum leaders to come. People will know that the mission was delayed at the last minute before leaders met in Tonga. And that caused a lot of anger behind the scenes, simply because the aim was that the mission might travel in July or possibly August so that they could report to the Forum leaders who gathered in the last week of August in Tonga. The very fact that officially the report will be delivered, not for some months, obviously lessens its impact. But I'm sure that from the discussions I've had with the Forum delegation, there's a sense that this is an issue that's not going away. This is a matter of regional concern, and the Forum Secretariat and Forum leaders will be monitoring this long before they gather in Honiara again in 2025.
A Pacific climate policy advisor hopes leaders in developed nations will start being more active in combating climate change once they see the impact in their own nations. It comes as a new report by the UN says global ambition to reduce greenhouse gases falls far short of where it needs to be. Caleb Fotheringham has more.
Current national greenhouse gas reduction plans, called Nationally Determined Contributions or NDCs, will see the world well overshoot the goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. According to the United Nations, current plans will see combined global emissions in 2030 fall about 2% lower than in 2019, when it should be just over 40% on the way to net zero emissions by 2050. Pacific Island Climate Action Network Sindra Sharma says developed nations need to immediately stop the expansion of new fossil fuel productions.
What the report is telling us is that current NDCs set a trajectory toward global temperature rise of approximately between 2.1 and 2.8 degrees by 2100. So that really significantly overshoots the 1.5 target and all the risks that come with that as well.
United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Executive Secretary Simon Steele says current ambition would guarantee a human and economic train wreck for every country, and the report must be a turning point. Countries are currently working on new nationally determined contributions.
We actually have new rounds of NDCs coming out. So this report should inform that new round of NDCs, saying that, look, we are so far from the ambition that we need to see.
Ms. Sharma says with each successive COP, new commitments are made, but it still seems the message has not sunk in for world leaders.
We hear this word 1.5 to stay alive used as a buzzword, right? But for smaller states, It's not at all a buzzword. It's a reality. Once you surpass 1.5, then the reality for these small island states completely changes.
She hopes developed nations will make changes after seeing consequences of the climate crisis in their own nations, like the bushfires in Australia or the flooding in New Zealand.
How completely embedded this crisis is to all levels of society, maybe they'll actually ramp up ambition and do the right things.
COP29 is 2 weeks away. Ms. Sharma says it's crucial for the Pacific as climate finance becomes the focus.
The Cook Islands Director of Whale Research is concerned an increase in whale watching tours may negatively impact the mammal's annual migration. Known as the Whale Lady of the Cook Islands, Nan Hauser passed a 27-year milestone of research in the Cook Islands earlier this month and says this season had been full of surprises. RNZ Pacific's Tiana Haxton sat down with the renowned marine biologist who was once saved from a shark attack by a whale to talk about her own efforts to save the whales.
It was a season filled with late arrivals, surprises and rare sightings, according to Nan Hauser, the director of Cook Islands Whale Research. Whale season in the Cook Islands usually runs from July to October, but Ms. Hauser says this year she had to be patient as the ocean's gentle giants ran on island time.
It was fabulous. It started out really slow, and we just with patience, they all came late. And it's been a phenomenal season. In fact, even after studying whales for 34 years, I saw some things this year that I've never seen before.
A standout moment involved 2 mother humpback whales and their calves. In an unusual display, the mothers allowed their calves to interact closely and play with one another and the researchers.
The calves were playing and the mothers were playing. They just had such a good time together. And one of the calves he used to come see us just about every day for 2 weeks, I think. Picked up his tail, just splashed us twice like that, just soaked us. We laughed so hard.
As humpback whales are generally solitary creatures, Hauser says this instance of sustained social behaviour among mother-calf pairs was extraordinary. Cute interactions aside, Ms. Hauser says this year marks a significant milestone for her research as she begins a new genetic study.
It was so great to turn my office into a genetics lab with University of Canterbury. We are actually sequencing the first genome of a Southern Hemisphere humpback in the world.
This data allows scientists to track how the species has evolved over centuries. Understanding how the humpback has adapted to environmental changes over time could be the key to saving the species from extinction.
They need protection so badly. Our population that goes through Oceania, it's the last of the endangered migratory population of humpbacks in the world.
Nan Hauser says the Cook Islands remains a key migratory pathway for whales, meaning whales travel through the area on their way to or from breeding and feeding grounds. She is concerned an increase in whale watching tours may disrupt and deter whales from travelling through, and says the growing trend of jumping in for selfies with the whales is harassment.
It's not that I totally object to studying them underwater. What I object to is like 12 people jumping off a boat on top of a whale for a selfie. It's about the respect and integrity in the water for those animals. When it becomes a commercial thing, it's overdoing it.
As Hauser has been advocating for legislation to protect whales from harassment in Cook Islands waters for decades, she welcomed the late Māori King's Treaty earlier this year. She says Kiingi Tuhetia's treaty calling for whales to be granted legal personhood was a major milestone for whale conservation. Signed by traditional leaders of New Zealand, Cook Islands and Tahiti in March this year, Hauser says the He Whakaputanga Moana Treaty is a big step in the right direction.
It is phenomenal in conservation initiatives to give personhood to these sentient beings. They should have had personhood a long time ago. It makes me very emotional. It makes me feel like the past 34 years of work with whales every bit of it was worth it because it came to this point.
As if listening in on our conversation, a humpback breaches right in front of us.
Oh, breach! Oh, what a goosebump! That was a huge breach! Oh, that was meant to be.
We sit and watch as mother and calf frolic offshore against the setting sun, painting a picture-perfect moment worthy of any postcard. A fitting conclusion to our interview. Nan Hauser says while there have been leaps and bounds in whale conservation efforts this year, for her team, this season has only proven that the mysteries of these ocean giants are far from fully understood, and the quest to protect them continues.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whāsui for.